Hare Krishna. So welcome back to our last session on the Gaura Lila series. We have been discussing on the topic of devotion amidst persecution. And in that connection, we discussed till now about the socio-political setting in which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's descent and pastimes took place, and how Chand Kazhi tried to stop the Harinam Sankirtan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took what Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur later called as the first civil disobedience movement. So he said, he took that against Chand Kazhi and he went into his bastion, into his stronghold. And the Kazhi tried to flee, but when he couldn't, he hid in his house. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knocked on the door and he finally came out. And then they were about to have a discussion. So we will focus in today's talks not so much on the specifics of the discussion as on the principles underlying it. So the Kazhi first told that actually I didn't persecute you this time because he said that Lord Narasimhadev had come in a vision to him and had warned him. So then from that point, Chaitanya, when he accepted that he was not going to interfere with Sankirtan, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him that you also drink the milk of a cow, and yet after that you kill a cow. So when just as our mother offers us milk, the cow also offers us milk. So why do you, by killing cows, why do you do something which is equivalent to killing your own mother? So the Kazhi tried to dodge the question by counter-questioning. He said, but even in your religious rituals also, your religion also, there is the killing of animals, including cows. There are animal sacrifices. There is the Ashwamedha Yajna, there is the Gomedha Yajna, where animals are sacrificed. So why are you finding fault in our scriptures? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then replied that yes, there are these provisions, but there are several conditions within it. Firstly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes how that these are not meant to be done in Kali Yuga. Ashwamedham Gavalambam Palapaitrukam Sanyasena Kalau Pancham Vivarjayet. It is said that 5 things are forbidden in Kali Yuga. So one of them is Ashwamedha. Ashwamedham Gavalambham, the killing of horses in sacrifice, the killing of cows in sacrifice, the acceptance of sannyas, the offering of sacrifices to one's ancestors, and the continuation of one's progeny through one's in-laws. Devarena sutotputtim kalau pancham vivarjayet. So in the scriptures, there are universal principles and there are specific practices. So the principle is that people, whatever situation they are in, their consciousness is meant to be elevated higher towards God. And what practices will lead to the elevation of consciousness, that will vary according to time, place, circumstance. Even in the Manu Samhita, which the Prabhupada often referred to as the law book for humanity, there also it is said that these dharma shastras, these rules which are given, they are not necessarily universal. So he says, these are, says there is Manu Samhita, there are many other smritis also, dharma smritis, which give different rules according to time, place, circumstance. The principle is that we are all sick in material existence and we need treatment to be cured. But what the form of the treatment will be will depend on the background, will depend on the circumstance, will depend on the nature of the infection. So we all cannot just, if we find a sickness, we cannot just go to a medical book, find out, okay, what are the symptoms, probably this is the disease, what are the medicine, this is the medicine, and take the medicine. We need a doctor. Similarly, if we go to scriptures, the Vedic scriptures especially, are not uniform, they are omniform. Uniform means there's only one form. Omniform means there are many, many forms. In fact, all forms we could say. What it means is that the scriptures give different instructions for different levels of people. And what may be a useful instruction for people at one level may not be a useful instruction at another level. So people who are in Tamoguna, for those people, they are anyway going to do tamasic activities. They are anyway going to say eat meat and slaughter animals for the purpose of eating meat. So the tamasic scriptures create a facility where there is indulgence with regulation. So for example, if it is said that, okay, you want to eat meat, then you can kill a goat yourself and you have to cut it into 7 parts, give 6 parts away in charity, and you have to do this only on once a fortnight on Amavasya. And after that, you can take 1 part. And while it is killed, one chants a mantra in the ears of the goat. Essentially, the very word mamsa is the Sanskrit word for meat. Mamsa, it is actually separated in 2 parts. Mam saha. I and saha is he or they or it. Mamsa means that I will become that. That means now I am killing this goat and I am consuming this flesh. But the karmic chain is such that we will get a reaction. And the reaction will be that this goat will eventually become a human being and we will become a goat and we will be killed. So there is awareness within the mantra itself that there are going to be consequences. And when one does it this way, so if in a community of people where everybody is, say, eating meat 3 times a day, there if somebody eats meats once a fortnight, that person becomes a saint in that community. You are so renounced, so self-controlled. Now what happens by this is that people understand, okay, this is something which is a higher level. So some people are inspired by the scriptures to come to that level, and then others aspire to come to that level, and they, as their consciousness awakens because of following the religious rituals, they also rise from tamoguna towards rajoguna, and eventually towards sattva-guna, and ultimately towards transcendence. So such statements in scripture about animal sacrifice, they are concessions. They are not recommendations. Concession means what you want to do, what A wants to do and B allows. What a patient has diabetes and the doctor says, don't eat sugar. Patient says, I cannot live without sugar. So the doctor says, okay, take 1 sweet once a week. And the doctor also gives medicines. And suppose the patient throws away the prescription of the medicines and says, the doctor told me to take sweet once a week. Now, that was not the instruction of the doctor, that was the concession. So in various religious traditions, it happens that what people are told, they interpret according to their convenience. When they interpret that way, they make the concession into an instruction and they neglect the instruction. So that is what had happened with the animal sacrifices. And that's why the scriptures predicting this would happen in Kali Yuga, they said that these are forbidden. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, yes, they were given the scriptures, they were meant to elevate people to a limited degree from lower consciousness to higher consciousness. But because they are likely to be misused in Kali Yuga, so they are not allowed. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further said, still, even when a cow is killed, it is not that a young healthy cow is killed, it is an old cow who is already given milk. And then further, the understanding is that when a cow is properly sacrificed in ritual, then that cow gets elevated to a higher body. In fact, any animal that is sacrificed in the animal sacrifices, that if it is done properly, then the soul is elevated to a higher level of existence. So in that sense, it is actually beneficial for that animal also. But it is not done solely with a craving for eating meat. So then the Kazhi, he asked several questions and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu answered them one by one. So Chaitanya Charitamrita does not go too much into the details of the discussions between Chand Kazhi and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But at the end point, as the discussion goes to and fro, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is phenomenally learned, and interestingly, he quotes not only from the Vedic scriptures, he quotes from the Quran also, talking about how God has a personal dimension. See, we usually think of personalists and impersonalists. So those who accept God to be a person is a personalist. Those who accept God as not a person, they are impersonalists. So now Islam falls somewhere in between the two. Why is that? We usually associate personality with a form. So yes, if you're a person, you must be having a form. So what Islam holds is that God is a person but without a form. Now whatever that means. So there is personalists and there are impersonalists. So Islam falls in between. They accept, because there are times when Allah speaks to Muhammad, and Muhammad, when he talks about Allah, also talks about God, Allah spoke this. So it's clearly he talks about as a person. But they hold that he's a person, but he doesn't have a form. Now there are in the Quran itself references to Allah's eyes and Allah's mouth and Allah's hands and Allah's legs. So they try to explain all these metaphorically. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, quoting the Quran itself, explained how God is a person, how God has a form. And the Kazhi becomes stunned into silence. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained systematically how the essential principle that is given in the Quran, that is similar to what is given in the Vedic scriptures. But the Vedic scriptures give a far more detailed and deeper revelation. And then at the end of it, interestingly, the Kazhi, he fell at the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he started chanting the holy names. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Kazhi discussed. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, basically the Kazhi, they decided that na buddhibhedam janayet. Na buddhibhed, do not disturb the minds of common people. So the Kazhi knew that if he, as a person in such a respectable position, if he started openly practicing bhakti, it would create a furor in the Muslim community over there. So Chaitanya, basically, he decided that he would devote himself to the Lord privately. But externally, for the sake of social convention, he would continue to practice Islam. But he assured Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that never again will your Sankirtan be interrupted. He said. So this is, in the Gaudiya tradition, the first example of interaction, what we could call as at an interfaith level. So now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has many different kinds of interactions. Now his interactions can fall into three broad categories. There are conversations, there are discussions, there are instructions, and there are transformations. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had, so for example, he gave instructions, elaborate philosophical instructions are given to Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. They fall in chapters 8 and chapter 19 to 25 of the Madhya Lila. Then there is also, there is transformations. There primarily we have Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Prakashanand Saraswati. These two people, they became transformed by hearing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they were not devotees earlier, but they became devotees. As Rupa and Sanatana, they were devotees, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed them how to go forward. And third is like a discussion which he has with Ramananda Rai, which is in the 8th chapter of the Madhya Lila. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita goes into elaborate philosophical discussions primarily in the Madhya Lila, whereas this comes in the Adi Lila, the 16th chapter, this particular pastime. So now there are a couple of other interactions also of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Muslims. One is when he is going on North India, and second is when he's just about to go towards Bengal, or he goes from Bengal towards Orissa. At that time he meets some toll collectors. So the toll collector, when he sees Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in such ecstasy, he becomes completely captivated. And he's totally captivated. He comes and falls at the feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu profusely blesses him. And he says that at that time the toll collectors would create a lot of trouble. But he assures that no toll collector will create any trouble for you. And similarly, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to North India, at that time also, and he falls in an ecstatic trance and he becomes unconscious. And at that time, one Muslim priest with a Muslim prince, they are traveling along. So this Bijuli Khan, he sees, and he says, this saint is lying down on this ground. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his attractiveness was so universal that even this Muslim king, he feels, hey, I should protect this saint. And he immediately catches all the associates of Lord Chaitanya. And he says, you have given poison to this saint so that you can steal away his wealth. The devotees start thinking, first they thought that these Muslims, they may harm Lord Chaitanya. But now they are threatening us. He says, no, we are his servants. We are not given in poison. And why is he falling unconscious like this? He says, no, he's in trance. He says, no, you have stolen from him. You have given him poison. So the devotees don't know what to do about they were arrested. And then the devotees start chanting loudly. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suddenly jumps up, awakens. And they say, what happened? He says, oh, these people had given you poison. He says, no. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, no, they are my associates. And then they start having a discussion. And then there again Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the discussion moves on, he completely transforms his people. And they surrender their life. And he said that these became, because they're Pathans, they become Pathan Vaishnavas. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells them to share the message of love of Krishna. Now, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we see in our tradition, the first Acharya, actually our tradition's history has three broad phases. One is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his immediate successors, the Goswamis, where the foundations were being established. And then it went on through Vishwanath Thakur till Baldev Vidyabhushan. And then after that, there's Bhaktivedanta Thakur, who comes about whose prominent period comes about 3-4 decades after Baldev Vidyabhushan. And at that time, the whole socio-political dynamics have changed. Because, as I told in my first class, that when Islam was ruling India, it was a political ruler, but it was never an intellectual competitor to the Vedic tradition. But by the time Bhaktivedanta Thakur came, at that time, the Western thought system had also come to India, and many Indians were being attracted. So Bhaktivedanta Thakur was the first person in our tradition who brought the tradition in a dialogue with modernity. And Bhaktivedanta Thakur wrote many important books. So Chaitanya Shikshamrit is one of his most important books. And in that, he raises the question of how do we understand that there are so many different religions with so many different faiths. So he explains, he gives the example of looking at a mountain. And if there's a tall mountain and different people look at the mountain from different perspectives. So he says, Plato looked at that mountain from the west, from the east. And Patanjali looked at the same mountain peak from the east. So, and he says, similarly, great thinkers have looked at the absolute truth from different perspectives. And based on where they are looking, and based on their language, based on their culture, they have described the vision of the same absolute truth in different ways. So he says that actually, a very beautiful statement Bhaktivedanta Thakur makes. One of the statements he says is that suppose if we happen to go to a place of worship of say some other religion, say if we go to a mosque or a church, what should we do over there? So Bhaktivedanta Thakur says that when we go over there, we should stand there and be there in a mood of reverence. He said, here is the same worshipable God whom I am worshipping. But he is manifesting in a way that is different from what I am familiar to. And on seeing how he is attracting people in this manifestation, my appreciation for the Lord's mercy is increasing. And my attraction to the Lord in the manifestation that I am familiar, that is increasing. So if we see some people devoted to God in their own way, we see that, oh, God is manifested in a different way to attract these people. And it is the same Lord whom I am worshipping. So we are attracted to the Lord in a particular manifestation, in the manifestation of Krishna. Seeing him manifesting in other manifestations, if we have a fragmented understanding of God, then we think, oh, maybe they are worshipping a false God. Or we may start thinking, maybe I am worshipping a false God. If we have a fragmented understanding, we become insecure. But when we have a integrated understanding, we understand that the one God who manifests in different ways to different people, then our understanding remains holistic. So, in any of the earlier classes, did I talk about polymorphic bimonotheism? No, okay. Okay, so in the world religions, the religions are broadly classified into monotheism and polytheism. Monotheism means they say there's one God. Polytheism means they say there are many gods. So now, the monotheistic religions are primarily Judaism, Christianity, Islam. These monotheistic religions say that those who are polytheistic, they are so primitive. How can there be many gods? God means He is supreme and there has to be only one supreme. So they had the experience of polytheism in Greek and Rome before these Abrahamic religions came. So they say polytheism is primitive and monotheism is more advanced. And they often classify the Hindu tradition as polytheistic. But we will see that whatever are the describers for glorifying God that are given in the Bible or the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita uses similar describers. I am the Alpha and the Omega of all things, it's said in the Bible. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Aksharanam akarosmi. Among alphabets I am A. Aham adishya madhyam cha bhutanam antayavacha. I am the beginning, the middle and the end of everything. So if we look at the way God is glorified, the describers glorifying God are remarkably similar. And the describers are actually the describers of the same one God that is talked in the Abrahamic religions also. But the difference is that whereas there is one God in the Abrahamic religions, Vedic tradition tells us, yes, there is one God, but that one God manifests in many forms. Advaitam achyutam anadim anantarupam. So He has many, many forms. So the Vedic conception of God, actually the categorization itself, monotheism and polytheism, it has come from a particular thought system. And that categorization does not apply to the Vedic worldview, Vedic conception of God. But still, if you want to explain the Vedic conception of God in that worldview, and the Vedic conception is neither polytheism nor monotheism. It is polymorphic monotheism. Polymorphic, morpha means form. Polymorphic means one God who manifests in many forms. But it is not just polymorphic monotheism. There is all over the world, now there is an increasingly assertive feminist movement. So these feminists argue that why should God always be male? God should be female. So in fact, there is a whole sect, there is a whole church where Jesus is depicted as a female with female bodily parts. So now this is actually what is, we are taking material sexuality and imposing on something higher. So now if you see the Vedic tradition is inclusive. God is not just male. God is a divine couple. So God is not just Krishna, it is Radha Krishna. It is Sita Ram. It is Lakshmi Narayana. And just as the child knows the mother the most, and the child and the mother are most intimately connected, similarly, the feminine potency of God is considered more merciful. She is the means by which we access God. So, the Vedic conception of there is one God, but He is a divine couple. So, He's not just male. He actually, ultimately, God transcends material gender. We cannot apply because the gender that we have, it is a characteristic of our material body. And God does not have a material body. But the gender polarity that is there in this world, where does it come from? It comes from the gender polarity that is there in the spiritual world. And that is God as the divine couple. So, the Vedic conception of God is not just actually monotheism. It is one God, but He always manifests in two forms. So, it is bimonotheism. Bi is two. So, the Vedic conception is polymorphic bimonotheism. And actually, it doesn't stop there. If you see, in the Abrahamic religions, they have the conception that there is one true God, and anybody else whom you are worshipping, they are all false gods. So, you should worship the true God and we should reject the worship of all the false gods. In fact, they say that all the false gods, not only should their worship be rejected, but that worship should be stopped. It should be destroyed. And that's why in these religious traditions, whenever they would conquer any kingdom, the first thing that they would do is they would go and bash up all the idols. That they would think they were idols. And their idea is that actually God is beyond representation. So any way that God is represented, then that is a concoction. That is a concoction. Because God, they say, is beyond human representation. So when God is beyond human representation, any representation is a concoction, and people get attached to the representation. And instead of worshipping God, who is represented by that representation, people start worshipping only the representation. And in that way, the representation of God becomes a competitor to God. That is their idea. And therefore, they say if the true God is to be worshipped, his representation has to be destroyed. Now, so there is one true God and there are false gods. Now, the problem with this conception is that, first of all, who says that God is beyond material representation? Yes, God is not material. But they argue that if you depict God through matter, then God is unlimited. You are limiting him. Yes, we could say that is true. But if you say that God cannot be depicted in matter, you are also limiting him. Because there is something that God cannot do. To say that he cannot manifest through matter. And more importantly, when we say that God cannot manifest through matter, not only are we limiting God, we are also limiting our access to God. Isn't it? Our senses are currently material. We can't perceive anything spiritual. So, God will become utterly inaccessible to us forever if we see that God cannot manifest at all in matter. And further, it is not that we depict God in matter. It is God's descriptions are given in scriptures, and based on that, we create a representation and invoke God's presence over there. So I'm not going to go into deity worship over here. But suffice it to say that they had the idea that they had one true God and there are false gods. So false gods have to be destroyed so that the true God will be worshipped. But the Vedic understanding is there is one true God and he also has assistants. So the Devatas in the Vedic tradition, they are not false gods. They are true gods, and they are, for those who cannot worship Krishna, within the Vedic tradition there are other objects of worship given. And by worshipping them, gradually people will get elevated and eventually they'll come to Krishna worship. So, there is one true God, but he can be worshipped at various levels. People in Tamoguna can be worshipped in some way. Rajoguna they can worship in way. Sattva-guna they can worship in some way. Of course, if people are merciful and if people are fortunate, and if they associate with merciful devotees, then even people in Tamoguna can start worshipping Krishna. And they can become elevated. But the point is that God makes himself accessible at various levels. It is not that God says, you have to worship me, otherwise you are going to go to hell forever. No. If you worship me, that is the best. But if you can't worship me, then you do whatever you can and you can have limited elevation by that way. So there is multi-level worship of God. So the Vedic conception of God is multi-level, polymorphic, bimonotheism. So actually, when we are forming a relationship with God, there are three things. There is the understanding of ourselves, there is the understanding of God, and there is the understanding of our relationship with God. And in the Vedic tradition, all three are given much more clearly than in other traditions. The three things are what? If there is any relationship, there is A, there is B, and there is a bond of affection between A and B. So like that is, who are we? This itself is, in the Bible, the word soul is frequently used. But what the soul is not very clear. The word soul is often used in a metaphorical sense to refer to our non-material essence. I mean, there is something non-material within, that is the soul. But that the soul is actually a concrete, higher dimensional being, that is not talked about so clearly. And because of that, they have the conception that there will be bodily resurrection. Bodily resurrection means that when there is final deliverance and judgment, those who have been faithful to God, they will go back to heaven and they will be there in the same body as they are now. So now this actually leads to a lot of problems. So because the conception of heaven is like a perpetual family reunion. So you go to heaven and you will have your grandfather and you will have a great grandfather and you will have a grandmother and your grand aunt and everybody will be there. So now basically what we the life that we try to enjoy in this world and we are unable to enjoy, that life we will be able to enjoy in heaven. That is their idea of heaven. Now this leads to several problems. For example, if we have a grandfather or a grandmother, now our vision of them has always been they're always old. So are they going to be eternally old in heaven? Well, that will not be heavenly for them, isn't it? To be old forever. You say, no, in heaven everyone is young. Okay, if everyone is young, then the grandfather and the grandson both are of the same age. How will the relationship go on? Or suppose somebody dies when they are some children die when they are 1 year old or 1 month old. But they never had a young body. So how will their resurrection take place? Or most complex is what happens because all the relationships in this world are supposed to go on over there. So suppose a man and a woman marry. And suppose the woman dies and the man marries again. Now he has 2 wives. So when they go to heaven, will he have 2 wives there? So the whole thing is when we try to eternalize the material, it leads to logical incoherence. So the relationships we are having in this world, they are real. In the sense that we are souls, they are souls, and we have a real relationship with others. But this is not the eternal relationship. The eternal relationship is centered on God. So what happens? The conception of the self itself is not very clear. So I was once going by train, and at that time, in the train there was a Christian preacher also there. He was talking very aggressively to people. And then he saw, so their idea is that anybody who is not surrendering to God, and their idea, the only way to surrender to God is through Jesus. He says, they are going to go to hell. And now this is not necessarily the idea of all Christian religions, but majority of them. And their further idea is that if anybody is teaching the doctrine of a false God, there is a special hell reserved for them. So, so of course, so then he started trying to preach to me. And then I took Srila Prabhupada's standard argument. He says, yes, you should follow Jesus. Then why don't you follow the 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill? Why do you kill animals? And now this is a question which often stumps them. So they usually, when you don't know answer, the standard strategy is dodge the question. So he said, if you are concerned about life, if you are concerned about not killing life, then why are you concerned only about the animals? Why are you not concerned about the infants who are being killed by abortion? So I said, so you are also opposed to abortion? He said, yes, of course. It is a living person there. How can you kill the person? So I asked them, see, earlier he had been telling that, I had told him the same example which Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives, that the same God is seen from different ways. He says, no, Jesus is the only way. Then I asked him, see, you say that we have to accept Jesus as our savior, thereafter we'll go back to Jesus, we'll go to God. But then what happens to the children who are aborted? They had no opportunity to accept Jesus as a savior. So will they, and if anybody doesn't accept Jesus as a savior, they go to hell. So will they go to hell? He says, no, they are innocent. So God will rescue them and they will go to God because they are innocent. I said, then what is the purpose of life? He said, to go back to God. He said, then why not abort everyone? He said, no, how can you do that? He says, see, if we abort them, they will surely go back to God. But if you let them take birth, they may not accept Jesus as a savior, then they will go to hell. So he says, no, you cannot abort like this. He says, yes, that's true, we cannot abort. Certainly we cannot abort. But why? So what happens when there is lack of philosophical clarity, there are a lot of logical contradictions that come up. So our point here is not to criticize any religion. Our point is to recognize that there are revelations given of different degrees. So Srila Prabhupada would be very simple. Sometimes people would ask him that, say, now I'm talking about Christianity primarily, but basically if you see Christianity and Islam, in many ways they are similar. Their conceptions of God are fairly similar. Their emphasis on who is the path to God, that is different. So Christians hold that Jesus is basically in the Abrahamic tradition, what happened is, Moses was considered to be a prophet. And after that it was described another prophet will come and he will conquer the world. So later on when Jesus came, some people accepted that Jesus was a prophet. So Christians, the followers of Moses are Jews. Then those Jews who accepted Jesus as a prophet, they became Christians. Then some of them, later when Muhammad came, they accepted Muhammad as a prophet. They became Muslims. Now this has just been going on. First Moses was thought the prophet, then Jesus was thought the prophet, then Muhammad was thought the prophet. So Muhammad came and said, I am the seal of all prophets. There are no more prophets after me. Because this will just go on. That was his idea otherwise. So he stopped it. So now basic difference, the conception of God is largely similar. Just that who they consider the prophet is different. So Srila Prabhupada had a simple question. He said, okay, that if you want to worship God, and if you find that there is greater knowledge of God given in a particular tradition, why not take that? We are not here to convert you from one religion to another. It's simply you can become more devoted to God. So to give a simple example, suppose a student is studying computer science, say in some university in Australia, and that person comes to know that, say, in MIT in America, computer science is more advanced. So will that student say that, no, I will study computer science only in my college, not in any other college? If a student starts saying like that, then we will ask them, are you interested in college or are you interested in knowledge? Isn't it? So the question is, are we interested in religion or are we interested in God? So religion is like a college. And that college is meant to give us knowledge. And knowledge of God. So that's why we see that the trans-sectarian nature of the Bhagavad Gita, when it says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all varieties of religions and surrender to me. What this means is, there are some Hindu scholars who just can't digest the idea of giving up dharma. And how can God tell you to give up dharma? So they, in some versions of the Bhagavad Gita, they change the Bhagavad Gita and they say, Sarva adharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all adharma and surrender unto me. Their idea is that they think, yes, we have to give up adharma. Yes, Krishna says we have to give up adharma. That is definitely true. But when Krishna says the word dharma, he says our religion should not come in the way of our going to God. So when Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya, he doesn't mean that you have to accept adharma. What he means is, give up all those dharmas that stop you from doing mamekam sharanam vraja. So the purpose of dharma is to surrender to God. So if any dharma stops you from surrendering to God, then give that up. And those forms of dharma that help us to surrender to God, definitely we accept them. So Arjuna did not become adharmic. Arjuna did his kshatriya dharma. He was a dharmic. But the principle is, God is not equal to religion. No, God is the purpose of religion. And God is greater than all the religions that are devoted to Him. So when God is equated with religion, not just equated with religion, God is restricted to religion, then that leads to sectarianism and conflicts. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, coming specifically, so this is actually what I discussed till now was a broad difference between the Abrahamic and the Vedic conceptions of God. But now within this broad Vedic conceptions of God, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's speciality, it is, I said there are three things in the process of bhakti. There is the understanding of the soul, there is the understanding of God, and there is the understanding of the relationship. That's what is required for loving God. Loving God is talked about in all religions. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's speciality, he's called as Mahavadanyaya Avatar. Now why is that? Within the Vedic tradition, the knowledge of Atma was already given. And the knowledge of Bhagavan Krishna, that is also given in the Vedic scriptures. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes it, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains the glory of Krishna in much sweeter ways. What is? How Krishna is all attractive. That is described in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition in a very sweet way. But more importantly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's special mercy is in the connection between the two. So the soul is here, God is there. And God is at the spiritual level of reality, soul is at material level of reality. So what is the process by which the soul can be elevated from the material level to the spiritual level? That process, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made most accessible and relishable. So the process of yoga was always there. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made it universally accessible. Accessible means, before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there were many bhakti saints, and there was the broad Vedic path. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very strongly emphasized that anybody from any background can chant the holy names and can become elevated by the chanting of the holy names. Not only elevated, as a person can become perfected. Sthana na dekhi patra patra. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not see what is the right place, what is the wrong place. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would not see what qualification a person has, what qualification the person doesn't have. He just gave his mercy to everyone. And this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu especially demonstrated when he went on his tours. When he went to South India, when he would go in South India tour, he would go to a village and he would be performing kirtans. And when in his ecstasy of kirtans, he would just go and embrace someone. And that person whom he would embrace, that person would become surcharged with spiritual energy. And they would start dancing in ecstasy. And they would go and touch someone and they would start dancing in ecstasy. And like that, it was a current of bhakti that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spread to everyone. And hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people would be dancing and singing in ecstasy. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in this way, made the process of bhakti accessible. He went around and just told everyone, chant the holy names. So there is a story in Chaitanya Charitamrita where there was a Kurma Brahmana. This Brahmana, when he saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ecstatically dancing, he was very attracted to him. And invited him, please come to my house for prasad. And he served him, and his whole family served Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And after that, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken prasadam, he went to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he said that, I'm afflicted by the continuous waves of misery in materialistic life. Therefore, he said, I wish to renounce materialistic life and please make me your assistant. Let me travel with you. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, never speak like this. He says, the potency of bhakti is universal. And wherever you are, you stay there and chant the holy names. Sometimes there is this conflict between grahasthas and brahmacharis. And brahmacharis may say, the renouncer order may say that, okay, the renouncer order is better. The household order may say the householder order is better. And sometimes when this conflict comes up, the focus goes on grahastha or on brahmachari. But what is lost is that both are ashrams. So both are means where the ashraya of the Lord is to be taken. And when we keep that focus in mind, and different people will take ashraya in different ways. If you focus too much on the this is grahastha, this is brahmachari, that is actually the grahastha and brahmachari, this is the varanas, are basically attainments of society according to, it could be according to various material circumstances. But the soul is the same, and the soul can always take shelter of Krishna. So if you see, most of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was sannyasi, and he had great sannyasis who were the Goswamis. But then he had equally great grahastha devotees. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's usual instruction to people is sthane sthita shrutigatam tanuvan manobher. Sthane sthita, wherever you are situated, be situated there, but focus on hearing about Krishna. And by hearing about Krishna, you will become attracted to Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told the Kurma Brahmana, there is no need for you to renounce the world. Stay where you are, chant Krishna's names and hear Krishna's glories. By that you will become elevated, by that you will become liberated. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made the process of bhakti accessible. Now, accessible means he went, traveled, instructed, inspired, electrified people with bhakti. And not only accessible, he made the process of bhakti relishable. Relishable means what? That the holy name is always Krishna. Abhinnatvam namanamino. The holy name is non-different from Krishna. At the same time, this non-difference is not always perceivable to everyone. That perceivability of the non-difference, that varies depending on the person's consciousness. So when we chant the holy names, we may think of the holy name as an ordinary sound vibration. So what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did was, he invested the holy name with the potency of his mercy. And because of that, the sweetness of the holy name becomes more easily relishable for us. And so the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, this mantra is chanted in general in the broad Hindu tradition also. And many of the early, when Srila Prabhupada started Krishna consciousness movement in America, at that time, initially most of his followers were Americans. But as the temple started being built, then many Indians started coming. And for Indians, kirtan was a normal part of their life. They would go to temple and there would be kirtans. But many of the first disciples of Srila Prabhupada, who were Indians, they said that when we went to these kirtans in America, mostly done by Westerners, we found that there was a spiritual energy in the kirtan that was not there in the kirtans when we would do it in India. In India, the kirtan would be more like a part of a religious performance. There is arti, there is kirtan. And some people participate, some people don't participate. But it's more of, we observe. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he would perform, in his tradition when kirtan is given, kirtan is not just a performance, it is a participation. And it is an active participation. And the participation is so active that actually even onlookers, they get transformed, they get elevated, they experience extraordinary ecstasy. So, I'll conclude with one story. There are many stories, of course, of kirtan, and there's the special potency of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that manifests through kirtans. So, we have kirtan festivals everywhere. So once there was a kirtan festival in Russia. It was not exactly a kirtan festival. There was a folk song festival. And the devotees went there. They said, we will go here with the folk song from India. And the folk song was Hare Krishna mantra. And when they were doing these kirtans, at that time, many people came, and all the other places it was a performance. Here it was participation. So all the crowd started becoming more and more and more. And everybody's plan was, they're starting the program around 6:30. So about 1 hour kirtan, 7:30 there would be a class, till about half an hour, 1 hour. And then after that, about 1 hour kirtan. And 9:30 they would get over. So now most of the people there, almost all the people were new. So they had put the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on big poster bar so that people could see and sing. And they were singing. And what happened at around 7:30, so people were singing, the kirtanier was singing, the people were singing. At around 7:30, the kirtanier stopped singing, but the people kept singing. Because they had no idea that this kirtan was exactly responsive or what. And the devotees saw that, oh, they are so jubilant, they just continued kirtan. So it became 8, it became 8:30, it became 9, it became 10. And the devotees were singing, their throats were exhausted, devotees were playing mridang, their fingers were exhausted, but their hearts were jubilant. It became 11, it became 12, it became 1. At 1:30, the amplifier started giving out smoke. And then they stopped the kirtan at that time, because now then the people went away. And the next morning, the devotees just waking up and they were chanting at around 7 o'clock. A young couple came over there. And they were Russian, they didn't know English. So they asked the devotees, we want to talk something. We have some questions. And this young couple, they said that actually, we just married, we have come on our honeymoon. So we came for this festival. And yesterday night, when we were singing the song that you were saying, that was the best night of our honeymoon. So we felt so happy. We never felt such happiness. So we wanted to know what was the song that we were singing. So they had no idea. They knew this is obviously something religious, but they had no idea what this song was. So this is what we mean by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu make the holy name accessible and relishable. Prabhupada said we don't even have to understand the language of the holy name. The sound vibration acts at the spiritual level and attracts and transforms people. So the ecstasy of the holy name and the ecstasy of the remembrance of Krishna is accessible and relishable for everyone. At the same time, there is a caveat. Caveat means there's a warning. What it says is, we say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the Shikshashtakam, the second verse is, Nam Akari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shakti Satrarpita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha. That in the chanting of the holy names, there are no rules. This is said in the second verse, and the next verse it says, Trunadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna. Amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So he says, suddenly, first you say no rule, and then you give a very difficult rule. Be humbler than a blade of grass. Be more tolerant than a tree. Give no respect to okay, sorry. Give all respect to others, expect no respect for oneself. Says this is almost like an impossible rule. So what does it mean? Dad, is there no rules or there is this impossible rule? So the point is that there is, for entry into the holy name, there is no rule. But to come to the level of constant chanting is not just possible just by mechanical verbal repetition of the chanting. We can chant for some time, we can try to chant as much as possible, we should try to chant as much as possible, but constant chanting is not just an activity of the lips, it is an activity of the heart. And that activity of the heart happens when the heart is truly humble, devoted to Krishna. So what this means is, say if we are at the material level of consciousness, and this is a spiritual level of consciousness. So when we say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is merciful, that does not mean that he brings the spiritual down to the material level. Yes, the process for rising to the spiritual level comes down to the material level. But still, we have to rise to the spiritual level. If we don't rise to the spiritual level, then we stay at the material level. It is not that Krishna keeps us at the material level, but it is that, suppose if we have not developed love for Krishna, and Krishna takes us to the spiritual world, we'll go to the spiritual world and everybody is absorbed in Krishna's pastimes and we'll be thinking of our bank balance in the earth. So Krishna never takes away our free will. So it is for us we have to consciously redirect our love towards Krishna. If we strive to redirect our love towards Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy will make that redirection very easy. Far easier than what it would be otherwise. But that redirection is something which we have to do. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that you have to be humbler than a blade of grass, to be more tolerant than a tree, if we look at these as separate virtues, no, the thing that, I should get no respect for myself, offer all respect to others, you think, what is my existence then? Who am I? If we think of these separate from love, then these will seem like impossible virtues. The point of these, when it's in humility, tolerance, respectfulness, the point of all these is to convey a state of absorption in Krishna. When we are absorbed in Krishna, we don't care whether we are respected or we are not respected. Even if there are difficulties, we tolerate them because we are absorbed in Krishna. So the point is, we want to develop humility, we want to develop tolerance, but these are not independent virtues. Our focus is to develop love for Krishna. And love essentially means absorption in the beloved. Now, even in material life, when people say they fall in love, we don't stand in love. So fall in love means what? It is not that a lover does pranam to the beloved. But what fall in love means is that one loses one's self-consciousness. One loses one's self-absorption. And one just falls into whoever one is absorbed in love. So the idea is that similarly, we as souls, we are meant to become absorbed in Krishna. And when that absorption in Krishna is there, naturally there will be humility, there will be tolerance. And so when we are absorbed in Krishna, then naturally Kirtaniya Sadahari will happen. So it is, there is the redirection of heart that which we have to do. Nobody else can do that for us. Once one devotee asked this question. He says, we are supposed to chant the holy names, but then, our utterance of the holy name is not pure. So if instead of I chanting 16 rounds, can I hear Prabhupada's japa for 16 rounds? The point here, yes, Prabhupada's japa is pure. But Prabhupada's japa is expressing his bhakti. And his bhakti is meant to invoke our bhakti. His bhakti is not a substitute for our bhakti. So every soul has to consciously choose to love Krishna. And we have to rise to the spiritual level. But when we strive to rise to the spiritual level, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we will find that the progress will be very fast. And that's why we see that there are many traditional Hindus who are religious, and they live religiously, but often they are attached to small things and not able to give up those small things. Some people may be attached to tea, some people may be attached to this, some people may be attached to that. But people start chanting Hare Krishna, and it is amazing. How one of Srila Prabhupada's early followers of Hayagriva Prabhu, he had gone to one lecture which Mayavadi was giving. And Mayavadi, he gave about 30 minutes lecture, and there was a break. And like that he was giving a seminar, but after every 30 minutes there was a break. So during the second break, the devotees went behind to meet this Mayavadi. And he found that he was smoking. So he said, and he offered them also, would you like to smoke? So he said, no, we are the followers of Srila Prabhupada, and we follow the regulated principles. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no smoking. So he said, oh, since when have you been following it? So he says, for the last 5 months. So this Mayavadi, he said, I have been teaching Mayavad for the last 30 years. And I'm still smoking. So what happens is, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, the higher taste becomes very easily available. The higher taste becomes accessible. And that's how the lower taste is easy to give up. Is relatively easy to give up. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy is such that he's made the process to go to the higher consciousness easier, and he has made that process sweeter. And if we just strive according to our capacity to absorb ourselves in his mercy, in the process that he has given up, in the holy name, in the remembrance of Krishna, we will over time start seeing magic in our heart. The attachments that are there, the attachments that seem to be holding on to us, they will fall apart and will march onward steadily towards Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has opened the doors of Vaikuntha. The Chaitanya Charitamrita says that sometimes there's a charitable person. A charitable person normally gives charity. But suppose that charitable person is very happy. At that time, in the great happiness, the charitable person will give great charity. And suppose the charitable person is madly happy. Some extraordinarily joyful event has happened. The charitable person is madly happy. Then that charitable person will give charity like a madman. So he says, so God himself is always charitable. But when God takes the mood of a devotee, he becomes even more charitable. But when God takes the mood of his topmost devotee, it is Radharani, at that time he becomes madly charitable. And that madly charitable manifestation is Lord Chaitanya. And it is our fortune that he, in his divine madness, he has blessed all of us with his mercy. He has given all of us the opportunity to take to the process of bhakti yoga. There are some great souls who went out in search for God, and then they found God. But for most of us, or at least for me, I never went out in search for God. Devotees came out in search for me. So, actually, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, that he's got his, what is Chaitanya Charitamrita is called Divyonmad, divine madness. And his divine madness, he's giving the topmost ecstasy to everyone. And Srila Prabhupada has taken that ecstasy and he's made it accessible for people all over the world. And we all are also recipients of that mercy. Coming through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, through his followers, through Srila Prabhupada, and through his movement. So we can all pray that we can accept this mercy and treasure it. We may not realize its mercy right now, but by hearing, when we absorb ourselves in it, we will realize it more, we'll relish it more. And then we will also become absorbed in this Divyonmad, this divine madness. The doors for the spiritual world have been opened, but by following this process lifelong, we will walk through the door and we will attain Krishna's abode. So thank you very much. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki, Jai Gaura Premanande. Are there any questions?
Prabhuji, from your earlier narration, we understand that the devotees who were chanting in public were not directly instructed by Lord Chaitanya to actually go out in public and do chanting, but they did it out of their their excitement. But then when they got into trouble with the Kazhi, Lord Chaitanya actually goes and helps them overcome the situation. So I mean, how is it? How can we understand it in terms of, you just mentioned he is the most munificent incarnation. In terms of it's a plot by
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is that Lord Chaitanya, he told the people to chant, but they became excited and chanted in public, and the Kazhi disrupted it. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu held them at that time. So how does this pastimes narrative relate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Mahavadanyaya? So yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercifulness was that he asked everyone to chant. Now, there is no rule against public chanting, but in that particular point, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not tell them to chant directly in public. But when the Kazhi stopped the kirtan, he did not just stop in public. He said, wherever I hear kirtan, I will come and stop it. So then, even the devotees' kirtan was being threatened. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Mahavadanyaya. At the same time, his mercy by his sweet will descended at a particular time. I think it was in Australia only. Srila Prabhupada, when he was in Australia, after the class, one girl was asking that, Swamiji, why did you not come before? So Prabhupada replied, we were waiting for you to be born. So, why the Lord performs a particular pastime at a particular time? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could have come 1,000 years ago. He could have come 100 years ago. Why he came at 500 years ago? Why he decided to start manifesting his Sankirtan pastimes at the age of 20? Why not 21? Why not 19? We understand that Krishna is an individual. And as an individual, he has his own sweet will. And he acts by his sweet will. So it is his supreme independence by which he arranged this pastime in a particular way. But I also mentioned that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first manifested himself as a scholar, and he established himself as a scholar. And then when he gave up scholarship for devotion, then the glory of devotion was demonstrated through the trajectory of his career. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took some time to establish himself as a precocious scholar, and then he manifested bhakti. So in this particular pastime, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not see who had started the kirtan. He focused more on the point that kirtan itself was being threatened, and he countered it. And that's how, through this countering, it was for the first time that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself performed Sankirtan in public. And then that became the primary mode of preaching for him for the rest of his life. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? So thank you very much for your kind attention. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki, Itai Gaur Premanande. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.